Hey, it's James here and Matt with the Journey into Mastery podcast. And today we're going to be discussing the whole language behind trades and the use of the terms apprentice, journeyman, and master, and what they mean today and what they originally meant. Yep. Just as an overview of what we're talking about in terms of gaining skills and becoming better at what we do. Sure. And then maybe also talk about our backgrounds in trades and where we came from and where we've gone. So
sure. And then how that system kind of follows every trade.
Right.
But we might primarily talk about flooring.
We're talking about flooring and then building trades as well. But yeah.
Great.
So we talked a little bit in our first introductory episode about this idea of gaining mastery and trying to get better at what we do. And one of the things that we often say when we're talking about tradesmen is apprentice, journeyman, and master craftsman. And I think we throw those terms around relatively loosely nowadays. It seems like even more so now than maybe 20, 25, 30 years ago, when I know I was starting out, when you were starting out probably as well in your trade. What's your sense of what those three terms just roughly mean?
Well, can I go one step back further to just laborer?
Because sure. Unskilled laborer.
If we unskilled, but I think once we look at just what is a laborer, how transferable is it when you can actually put your hands to most things and you have skills of processing, of how to move something from A to B or efficiently.
Right.
And you start learning trades by observing trades. I think that's probably one of the big things that carried through for me, right? How do you learn? You got to see it. You got to see how people think, how they operate. And hey, there's some times where there's, rougher characters that you're working under. But these guys in their different ways are actually trying to teach you, trying to work with an unskilled laborer to bring them forward. Like a lot of people think, oh, this guy might be cursing and swearing at me or calling names, which you can't get away with as much anymore.
No, it's changed a bit.
But probably when we were under the trades, you could have wrote a book of all our nicknames and cuss words.
Yeah.
But there, I think if you cut through that, there's a element where, hey, these guys actually want you to learn this. So
that's true.
They want you to start thinking step by step, and then 3 steps ahead, and then what's 10 steps ahead. So, I mean, if you go from laborer to a red seal, or whether a trade has that or not, but a ticketed tradesman with years of experience, the difference is so far, but you have to start somewhere. So maybe we could start with laborer.
Sure.
What's labor?
And I mean, you bring up a really good point too, because a lot of young guys that do end up in trades, they don't start off necessarily knowing what trade they're going to go into. Let's just keeping within the building trades. I mean, you could start off drywalling or painting or framing. A lot of guys start off framing or just pushing wheelbarrows on a general construction site. That's not even really, you're not even working tools. You're carrying buckets and lumber and sheets of plywood, and you're basically just a mule.
And that can be where you then see,
you get to see
this. I might want to go into that way, or I might go this way. And for sure, we would say right off the bat, there's no one trade that's better than the next. Like, there's specialties.
Except for electricians.
do they think they're better? I don't know. There's definitely specialties of, and everyone has their niche, but we all need each other. And, say a house or a business or a complex doesn't go up without all pieces.
Everybody's got to be there,
Right.
right? So one of the things, I mean, my background, I was right into flooring because it's a family business type thing. So I didn't really I saw it directly from the flooring experience from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really spend any time I've never done any other labor in any other field other than flooring.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think that's an unusual thing. The majority of people are coming in through general construction, and then from there they're developing. Like a lot of guys might be like working outside in the winter and then looking at the building that they'd completed and got to lock up, and the flooring guys are rolling in and going into an indoor environment.
Right.
Or the finishing guys are going into an indoor environment where the framers are still outside in the cold. That's a thing,
Tough.
right? Like
Yeah.
it's a lot more difficult if you're subject to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's why one of the worst, I think, would be roofing, because you're out in the elements steady and you're right under the elements.
Yeah.
But again, guys got to do it, and we're glad that there are guys that are out there that are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But flooring definitely does have that advantage of being an indoor trade. Generally has to be heated too, because you can't really put flooring in without heat. So we're right at the end of that cycle, right before a job goes from a job site to a living space or a commercial space or a home.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that I totally gravitated towards right at the beginning, early on, was you walk into plywood and drywall dust and paint on the floor, and just it looks like a job site. And when we left, it was a home.
Yeah.
So in the at least the residential side.
Probably
of things.
that goes with most of the guys.
Yeah.
You got no roof, you put a roof on, or you
Yeah.
put
Definitely.
put the paint on the walls, and boom, the transformation.
Yep.
Right. We have that for sure with flooring.
Yeah.
I mean, take another trade of mechanics. Something's broke, boom,
Mm-hmm.
fixed. Being in trades is super rewarding.
That's true.
And I don't know, I've heard that, maybe I'd say it wrong, but the upcoming like doctorates or the place to be is in trades moving forward, because with the expansion and population and need for this, it's becoming very sought after, with skill, and not just you can't build the trades with just labor. You have to have the skill behind it.
The craftsmanship.
That craftsmanship is perfect word, yeah. And
So-
that is where it seems right now like there's a lack in it, which is making it even more valuable and even more financially profitable.
Yeah, for sure.
And financial rewarding.
Yeah.
To I heard, was it our friend John here the other day who said one of what was that? One of his kids' friends, something like that, went into sheet metal and was making 150.
I wasn't talking to him, but yeah.
Might have been somebody different, but some
Yeah.
of these kids can come out and in 5 years be making some serious
Yeah, for
cash.
sure.
I mean, so what does it take? It takes some initiative, takes a bit of character, responsibility. You got to have that groundwork.
Yeah.
Because it's not chasing the money; it's chasing that
Craftsmanship.
and being. Every trade will have a niche as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every trade is going to have. The niche can just be how good you are in that
for
trade,
sure.
right? So
Yeah, and going back to that, the use of those terms, we started with laborer, and then you have your apprentice, and you have your journeyman, and your master. In the in the Middle Ages, when those terms were first established, to become a master tradesmen, you actually had to build an masterpiece of in your trade. So whatever it happened to be, like say if you're a furniture in the furniture making guild or whatever it happened to be, you would build and submit to an overarching body a piece of work that they would rank as whether or not you were a master. So that's something really cool that I feel like we kind of have lost. In order to run your own business and employ people in the Middle Ages, you had to be a master. In order to be a master, you had to do this like work of this masterpiece, right? Literally masterpiece. That's what it was called. And you could continue to be employed as a master, but only masters could employ other journeymen or other apprentices.
Right.
Journeymen could work for anyone because they had graduated the apprentice program, but and apprentices had to stay with the master and generally live with them for at least 7 years. So that was on par with with the academic system of bachelor's, master's degree, and doctorate, which is essentially to get a master's degree, you have to have a fairly broad, encompassing understanding of the field that you're in. And in order to become a PhD, you had to actually produce a research or a document, a paper that was a significant contribution to the field that you're becoming a doctor in. So that very closely aligns with that whole concept from the Middle Ages of the apprentice, journeyman, and master vernacular that's been used. To be fair, I think a little bit of that mastery has been lost in all trades. Now, not to say that there isn't great masters within the trades, but it's much rarer to see someone that has contributed something of the level of a masterpiece to their trade.
We're not brick masons chiseling things
an arch some type of inverted archway or something like that that's like extremely complex and so.
But we have to see, that's the point of the apprenticeship. We have to see what the end result is. We have to see how good it is. That's why a guy can't just start, fumble around, do it yourself, get better. That's not the best way because you don't know how good you have to aspire to or get to. You have to be underneath somebody to do that.
That's right.
I literally, when I came through my apprenticeship, had the guy that I was working with next to me literally pull on my ear and say,
so an old German guy?
Hungarian.
Okay, fair enough.
But he would pull me over to look at a problem and say, what do you see here? And then boom, you're going, okay, this and this and this and this, and what am I missing? How do I process this? Well, how can you do that unless you're under somebody who's challenging you, who's showing you how it should be, who's showing you the method step by step, and you can do so far on your own, trial and error, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, go again. Put something together, realize you missed something, have to come all the way back, and but how much better is it when you're under someone? This apprenticeship life is pretty much required in my mind.
I 100% agree, and I was lucky enough to come up under Lee, who was he was doing inlays in PVC and marmoleum for I remember this one project he did where he was doing a school up in the interior that was like indigenous school, and they had like this logo and all these animals that they wanted, like this really intricate piece of art that was like clouds, but it was different animals.
Oh,
And they wanted that inlaid into PVC right in the middle of the main foyer, like the central foyer of the building. And it was like 25 feet in diameter, this circle. And it was like massively intricate, not hard lines, all soft lines and like, you know, artwork, right? And the way he did it was he projected with an overhead projector from above the catwalk above onto the ground, onto the floor, and then he cut out everything individually and then welded it in, like, because we're doing, like, I believe it was probably back then, it might have been PVC, either marmoleum or PVC. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine anybody that's out there in the flooring industry, how difficult and complicated this would be. But it was a work of art. And coming up under a guy that had that much attention and love for what he did, I think it's a rare thing.
It's inspiring.
It's inspiring.
Yeah.
It's something where you're like, you actually, it's the kind of thing that gives you such deep respect for what goes into that next level of doing something. It's one thing to do something to, you know, just a passing grade, and then another to be like an absolute master.
Yep.
So definitely that was it did two things to me. It was awe-inspiring, but then also it actually, I ended up not becoming a journeyman in flooring. I was always an apprentice. I did about 5 years, all the way through high school and university, and then a couple years after university, and then I took my degree and I went overseas and I embarked on a different path. But it was such an important aspect of where I came from, and it's it stayed with me my entire life. That level of detail and
and you circle back, so you're a knowledge base.
Oh yeah, like I've been around it my whole life. I keep getting drawn back into flooring, but just a piece of like the actual journeyman piece of it. It wasn't. It was something that I had immense respect for, but it wasn't the path that I wanted to go. I was more oriented around the business side of things and growing the business, and then later on the tools and like trying to do something that was like changing the entire industry, changing the marketplace. So that was our way of trying to have a legacy in the business and make our mark in the business. So yeah, no regrets at all. Always have a strong love for flooring, and there's different ways to get at it, right? I guess that's another part of it. You can start off right in the trenches, but there's other aspects of the business that you can grow into, and the more knowledge that people in sales and in operations have of the day-to-day operations on the ground in the trenches, the better things work in general, because they have an understanding of what the challenges are. Yeah. So that's something that we're often looking for with our people, right?
We could give a basic idea of apprenticeship program is 4 years with 3 years in between each year. Work a year, and then go to school for 6 months, and then work another year, go to school. So it's back and forth. So it's that blend of the hands-on and knowledge base. So that program, like a lot of the guys are hands-on and they get worried about the school, but I think when you're dealing with something that you're passionate about or looking at, that it's way easier than a guy would think. And that's the way to go. I know people who started one apprenticeship program. There's actually some, and then I should finish the sentence. So I know some guys who started an apprenticeship program and then switched.
Right.
And again, we're saying nothing's wrong with that, because find what works for you, your personality, and then there's intro programs at some of the trade schools too
Right.
that give you
Give you more of a
overview
broad-
of almost every trade.
Yeah.
And like in my high school, we even had welding and
Yeah, we did too.
automotive and
We did auto, yeah.
carpentry and back then it
Electrical.
was printing, and there was a black room, and
Oh, yeah, dark room. Yeah,
for
I did that too.
for all that, and then it got into computers, so it was computer drafting, CAD
Yeah.
work, and we actually, I mean, I don't feel that old, but we had full drafting boards, and we would have to draft,
Yeah.
hand draft
Yeah.
on the
Yeah, I went back in my
those
day too. There was no
curved boards.
computers. You did it right on the
Yeah.
paper.
But now it's totally different, and the schools will give that overview if you don't know what. But I do think that people will find that
Oh,
if they
for sure.
if they explore it, and then what's after apprenticeship? It's
So journeyman, right? Like from what I understand, the word journey, it's a French term that basically was work for a day. So it's for the full day, which meant that they got paid by the day.
Mhm.
So they weren't an apprentice anymore. They were working for pay, and they could transfer their skills to whichever. A lot of them would wander around, like they'd move through the countryside doing their trade, and they would be paid for the day. So it's what we would consider a subcontractor nowadays for them, just generally speaking. Someone that's essentially got the skills, got the ability to do a broad range within the field, and is able to subcontract out his work.
Mhm.
Now, they're not supposed to employ others. Maybe not today, but in the old days, they weren't allowed to employ others, but they were allowed to rent, to sell their services. So that's what a journeyman historically was in the medieval ages. Nowadays, it's a lesser used term. You don't hear it too often. I think it roughly equates to a red seal or a gold seal, depending on the aspect of the business that you're in.
A lot of people want to jump, right? They want to come in, do a little bit. They think they've got it in all different trades.
Right.
They just think, okay, I got this, and go forward. Well, it's more than just a truck of tools and that. What makes the difference with a journeyman and a master is when you can problem solve, when you can have the foresight to not get into a problem, or to know how to get out of a really sticky
That's
situation.
the key right there. Yeah.
So the journeyman has the experience to not make foolish mistakes and to execute at that next level up.
Yeah.
So,
And deal with unforeseen situations that arise.
Yeah, and that's you can only get to that level with hands-on, eyes-on experience.
For sure.
Time is the only way that
Yeah.
that you learn experience, and everyone has to make mistakes.
Oh, for sure.
Basically, when I'm looking at some subcontractors coming in, I'll look at photos and
All
test
the
them out
slam
on
dunks.
smaller jobs and that to get to know. But part of the discussion that I actually pry into a little bit is to find out where they made a mistake, or like, oh, did you ever have the loose popping tiles? And their answer is going to tell me a lot.
Sure.
One, are they arrogant and never admit anything, or are they, I learned early on how to properly follow this and that procedure,
Sure.
or what, right? But I kind of don't want somebody who seems to never have made a mistake, because then
it's
they
a bit of a
don't
red
know.
flag.
Then they don't know that they're mistakes either.
Or
right?
they don't know them, or they're just not challenging themselves either. So on the at the worst case scenarios, they don't recognize their mistakes. Better case, but still not great, is that they just don't put themselves into, Because there are guys that are just such a limited amount of. But again, these guys aren't what I would consider a journeyman.
Yeah.
I have a fairly, my opinion in flooring is you need to have been able to. You may not continue to do it, but you have to have the technical skill to be able to install pretty much all the different surfaces, including commercial sheet goods, flash coving, carpet. If you're just doing plank or glue down plank or click system plank, you're more at the level of general labor.
You might upset a few people there.
Well, it is what it is.
But it's true. It's so true.
I mean, I tell them straight out. It's not like I don't hold back. I always tell the guys I like, learn to do those other things because you get used a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a secret that's the preference. I guess it's a little bit more old school, but you come from a certain perspective. It's hard to see things from that broader perspective. I think it's understandable why you would prefer to have someone like our guy, one of our top guys, Richard. He does it all. Like, he doesn't necessarily want to do everything because he's been doing it for a long time. He has his preferences, but he can and will do anything to a high standard. So that's definitely a part of it.
I think a true journeyman also is in continual learning, right?
For sure.
So this is that's where maybe it differentiates between a guy who just wants to stay doing those two things that he does well, and that's okay, stay in that. But really, we respect these guys who just continue to learn. They're researching, they're looking, they're maybe nobody wants to jump into really difficult stuff, but they would because in the end they're going to learn something, or it's a challenge, and
keeps it interesting for some guys. They're built like that, right?
Yeah,
they're looking for the thing that's interesting. So here's another little saying that I wanted to hear your opinion about. Okay. There's a common saying. It's actually incorrectly stated. Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
The original quote was actually Jack of all trades, master of one. I think there's a massive difference between those two things, obviously. What's your take on that? And I think that you actually would have a really interesting take on this because I think you're the type that you might have experienced a little bit of this in your own.
Well, I used to think of the first phrase, master of none, as a negative.
Sure.
And I probably would have put myself into that category for years. I touched all kinds.
Yeah.
I mean, if I looked at where I started with my dad and my uncle on sites, they were doing low voltage alarm systems, central vacs, and that, and they had a company, AFM, anything for money.
Oh,
so
fair enough. This is new. I've never heard this.
Oh, yeah. So, and that was just a behind the scenes joke, but but it actually was called that, and the AFM was the title.
Yeah.
Nobody knew it was the title.
That.
It
Yeah.
was anything for money.
Yeah.
But we would do whatever it would take, right? And sometimes, like, my uncle was an electrician too, so
right.
he would have me pulling wire as a kid. I learned how to wire, but then I asked the questions. Hey, what's this with the three-way switch? Like, how's this coming in and out? And then you start learning, and then there's transferable skill there, right? So then that can go into most trades because your curiosity and
learning to learn, kind of
learn, yeah. So I don't know where I was starting in this. Where was I going?
Well, as you said. And I kind of put myself in that boat as well. I would have always considered myself the saying that I always thought it was jack of all trades, master of none.
Right.
And I kind of fit into that category myself. I felt like that for a good portion of my life. But learning that the saying is actually, and I think more aptly and more correctly, jack of all trades, master of one, that's sort of where we were headed.
Yeah, I think that is ideal, but again, if you look at to draw on experience from all your touch points of little trades you've touched, like, I mean, when I bought my first house, one winter the furnace cuts out, right? I mean, you don't have money just to call somebody
expense.
in. So I did all the basic checks and then pulled the circuit board and saw there was some solder joints, touched them up, put it back in, never had another problem. My uncle said, because he was another uncle was the HVAC guy.
Yeah.
He's like, you saved yourself $1,000 easy,
Right.
like without question, probably double that. And then sometimes you just do it, and is that the master of none? But you know what? There's a skill there of that curiosity or the
For sure.
just curiosity, I guess, and challenge. I might as well try, and if I got to call someone, I'll call someone anyways, right? So there's so much transferable skills. So you pull on all that over, and then to specialize is really the way. In the end, to end on, like to have a career, to dial right in, to know what you want, and be the guy that everybody calls for the trade that you're in. It's like you can't work 13, 15, 16 years if you're doing that and you're not who people are calling.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey Matt, how do you do this? How do you do that? I don't know. It's a problem if you just if it's just a job. I don't like that because there's not the same skin in the game, they say, right?
For sure.
So this idea that, hey, let's get experience over everything, but then the most ideal to dial in and zone in on that one. Be the expert. Be the top of that trade, right?
Yeah, that's an excellent way of looking at it. I think the way I always looked at, or once I learned that saying, or the correct saying, was that once you've mastered one trade, you can apply the lessons of that one trade to a vast array of different tasks and bring mastery, even though you don't know to the degree that in all these other fields. You understand what depth there is to your field, so therefore you can understand the depth in other fields and know that really you're just, even if you're just touching it in a tertiary sort of peripheral way, you're still bringing that level of mastery from your own trade or your own expertise. So I really love that saying, because I think I've heard it said many times that in sports and in different endeavors, that you take someone that's a world-class, say, wrestler, Olympic level, that guy, you put him into like MMA, and he's going to fish the water. It's a different sport, but he's got that level of dedication, that level of workmanship, the ability to show up, be disciplined, and learn. The learning to learn aspect of it. When you're a person that has learned to learn and learned at that higher level, it's easier to pick up other things quickly too. And you may never get anywhere near that level of depth in other things if we're talking back in trades. But it gives you a better understanding of how the whole job works. And this is a really key component of what we talk about all the time in terms of making the job flow, is understanding a little bit about what the other guys are doing, the other trades are doing, and keeping the flow going. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like in where we're at in with Journey is we're really trying to get our guys like at all levels on the path. Like we're trying to like give them the opportunity to do it the right way and show them the value of doing it the right way. And that's what I think that's what our responsibility is from the flooring perspective and also just as a business to try and inspire our younger guys and then have older guys that are expert like journeymen that are experts, right?
Yeah, we are the ones to bring them into it. We have to inspire these kids. There's a number of years ago, one of the high schools asked if we could do a work program for one of the kids.
Yeah.
And we brought him in and tried him and loved the guy, just kept working with him until the season ended. And did I work 2 seasons with him? We tried, I think.
Yeah, it's possible. It's been a while since we did that.
And I think they backed out in the second season or the second school year, and I was kind of glad. And I debriefed with the trades teacher and said, we started him in an apprenticeship program, and so his hours would count and that. But it in the debrief, it got quite difficult because he wasn't comfortable, safe with tools.
Yes,
he was nervous and that. And okay, then it's not for him. So he ended up realizing that, and it kind of backed off. But the really almost disturbing comment from the teacher was, well, we didn't like him working in the shop, so we thought send him out to a trades program. And I was like, I
didn't hear that part.
What is wrong with this? Because if he can't work in a regular
school shop, and you're putting him into the real world where he can really actually hurt himself. Very backwards. Yeah.
I said, well, what's the perception of trades here, right? So we have to change the perception and look at what's it like to go from here to there, and really, Journey Flooring is always looking for guys that care, guys that show up, guys that are passionate, guys that are on the top of their field, and then they represent us if they're coming on as hourly or as a subcontractor.
Yeah.
But boy, we have to break this idea that trades, just dump somebody off.
Yeah, that's
if
certainly different from my early perception. I guess that's a little bit of the generational potential movement, because there was I don't know about from where you were coming from, but when I was a young guy, there was like a little bit of prestige, even amongst university students. If you were working in a trade in the summers, it was vastly superior to working in a restaurant or something like that, just doing like retail or something.
Yeah.
It was like there was a little bit of respect just for having the ability to cross those two worlds, because you're in an academic setting and then you're moving into which is somewhat the equal, but just in the physical realm, the trades, right? So definitely I always had that perception. Maybe it's because I grew up around it, but I felt like other my friends as well that weren't maybe from that environment, they looked up on it. They didn't have the skill set to be able to do those jobs. They were higher paying jobs too. Like even as a laborer, it was way better.
Yeah,
quite significantly.
Well, that's
better.
why I came out straight from high school, went into apprenticeship, and I would say in 3 years I was making what my dad was as a factory worker for his entire life or whatever.
And factories are
25
generally
years.
Good work. Good
and he would have been supervisor in a factory, and came out, got my license, and pretty much instantly right after getting the red seal was making what my dad was
Yep.
after 25 years or something.
And it's just getting better and better.
And there's no, it's just the way, you know, these guys, people need to actually look to see what their path is, because you've got a hybrid path.
Mhm.
I went straight into trades. My brother went to university, took on debt and
Yeah.
the time, and then went into career. I mean, the bonus of the trades program is you're right in there making
Yep.
straight away, and then you're paid a fraction of your wage when you go off to the school for the
Yep.
time, and then you come back and you get an increase.
Yep.
So there's huge benefits. So we would work with schools again for sure, but
Oh, yeah.
we gotta get people viewing trades as like a really viable angle, and not just for money, but
No, it's the satisfaction too. I think we touched on that earlier
Mm-hmm.
on. Both of us talked about how it was awesome to see the transformation of your space as you went in there. And
Mhm.
I mean, it's something that I would say, having been around it for 30 plus years, 35 years, was the earliest sense of accomplishment in a workplace that I had.
Oh, yeah.
Was the ability to see the transformation. I mean, it's fairly obvious. That's why they have these reality TV shows and that type of thing, like, transforming their spaces and stuff like
Yeah.
that, because it is remarkable.
Yeah.
And there's obviously, being that we're a finishing trade, we're right at the end of the process, so you are getting basically the finished product as you walk out. Generally, we're the last ones out the door.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that's one of the big advantages of flooring, for sure. That, and you're working inside in warmth. Again, have to reiterate that. That's a big benefit,
Well,
especially when it's raining and cold outside.
We had a colleague in here today that was 50 years in the industry, and he still is excited as a
Oh, yeah.
kid at if winning, getting this project, big or small, and then
Yeah.
seeing it before, seeing it after. And
Oh, yeah.
it's the guy's, how old would he be, 70?
Yep, in his 70s.
And 50 years in an industry and still loving it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's super rewarding.
I mean, the same as from a personal perspective, watching my mom and Lee, they loved work. Like my mom, I would joke with people that knew my mom later on at the end there, where I'd say, "Oh yeah, my mom. Did you hear my mom's retiring?" And they'd be like, "No way, Judy's never going to retire." And I say, "Yeah, she's going from 6 days a week down to 5." But it wasn't because she needed to work; it was because she loved it. She was in the store because she loved being there. It was like, you become part of the community too, right? You start to have relationships with people. It becomes an extended family. The different contractors that we worked with, we dealt with them for 25, 30 years, right? Like it is like a very, very human experience being involved in this type of endeavor. It's not just your typical, buying and selling type of environment. There's something more to it than that, and it's very heartwarming.
So then the question is with businesses, how do you keep that personal touch, customer service? Maybe that's another
I think it
kind
would-
of another podcast
For sure.
to talk about. Let's note that down, because big or small, we've gone into corporate world too.
Mhm.
How does business change on all those different scales?
Yep.
But flooring as a journeyman master, we can talk about that. Most people probably don't know there is a trades program, a Red Seal certificate. There's even shops that are unionized. That I think most of the union shops pull people right out of the trades program.
Yep.
And there's pluses and minuses on all that direction too.
Sure.
And there's good.
The training center is excellent. Lee and I used to go there probably almost every year and do training sessions with our tools.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys loved it because of introducing them new tools. Like, the industry hadn't changed much in 50
Mm-hmm.
years. So having new tools that helped injury prevention, that type of thing, was always fun. We have, actually, maybe down the road, pull out some of the old videos for some of the training centers that we videotaped.
Sure.
Just to show people the training facility is great on Annis Island.
I mean, I'd like to talk about tools a lot on a different one because
Yeah, for sure.
Because why are some guys still using the old tools?
Yeah.
And there's reasons for one or the next, but hey, let's talk tools at some point
Oh, for tech
because
tools,
there are some advancements that have made quite a difference in all
Yeah.
trades, and finding that, being progressive, thinking, that's
yeah, the innovations.
to spend a little bit on a tool, but if it saves your body,
Oh.
I mean, now this is how to make a guy last an entire career in
That's
a
right.
trade, instead of burning them out, breaking them down.
Yep.
Right. Let's say the carpet. So this knee kicking business is quite a shockwave down your body.
Oh, it's
So
terrible.
there's been some small improvements on that, and others that I'd probably say are revolutionized it.
Yes.
And so, but a lot of people stick with the old one just because they maybe don't want to put out a few $1,000s, but if it could extend their career 10 years,
Yeah, it's
why,
a no-brainer.
why not, right? And
Yeah.
there's probably that in all trades, and so talking tools will definitely be
Oh, yeah.
a good
I think that'll be a recurring
discussion.
theme.
Yeah.
For sure. So I think, this has been a great discussion. Again, Journey Flooring is all about looking at ways to incrementally move forward in all different aspects of the business and the trade.
Yeah.
And this podcast, I hope, helps people get an idea of what they can do within the trades and how they can improve themselves as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's been a great conversation. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, James. Great.
Yeah. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, take care.